Hollywood studios rejected Mel Gibson's proposal for The Passion of the Christ over 60 times, calling it career suicide and unmarketable religious propaganda. Yet, this supposedly doomed project became the highest-grossing R-rated film in history, earning $6 to $11 million worldwide against a $30 million budget. Have you ever wondered why a simple carpenter from an obscure village has more historical documentation than the most powerful emperor of his time? What would it take to convince modern skeptics that someone who lived 2,000 years ago actually existed? The answer lies in raw numbers and archaeological stone. When Gibson sat across from Joe Rogan in January 2025, he delivered a revelation that silenced the podcast king. More than 40 ancient documents mention Jesus Christ directly by name. If you enjoy content that helps you grow spiritually, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our community for more inspiration. Let's get started. Emperor Tiberius, who ruled the vast Roman Empire from 14 to 37 AD and commanded legions across 3 continents, appears in barely 10 historical records. A wandering teacher from Nazareth, who owned no property and left no coins bearing his image, has 4 times more documentary evidence than Caesar himself. Gibson's voice carried conviction as he challenged every skeptic watching. History has tried to bury this man for decades, but the stones cry out louder than any doubt. The year was 30 AD when Jesus of Nazareth began drawing crowds across the dusty roads of Judea. Rome's iron grip controlled the Mediterranean world, yet this small province harbored something that would reshape human civilization. Religious authorities grew nervous, Roman governors took notice. The message of love, forgiveness, and divine redemption spread like wildfire through synagogues and marketplaces. His teaching lasted only 3 years before culminating in crucifixion under Pontius Pilate's orders. Yet those brief years generated more historical documentation than decades of imperial reigns. Tacitus wrote about him. Josephus documented his existence. Suetonius mentioned the tumult his followers caused in Rome. Pliny the Younger described organized Christian communities singing hymns to Jesus as if he were divine. Gibson leaned forward during the interview, his eyes intense with purpose. The evidence doesn't create faith, but it removes every excuse for denying reality. We're not talking about legends or mythology here. We're examining concrete historical facts that any honest investigator must acknowledge. The documentation speaks with unmistakable clarity about a man whose existence changed everything. The Mediterranean sun blazed overhead on June 15, 1961, when Italian archaeologist Dr. Antonio Frova's team made a discovery that would silence critics forever. Working in the ancient Roman theatre of Caesarea Maritima, excavator Maria Teresa Fortuna Canivet noticed something unusual about one of the limestone steps. What appeared to be ordinary building material contained carved Latin text that would rewrite archaeological history. We all face moments when doubt clouds our understanding and finding truth seems impossible. In those moments, solid evidence and divine revelation can make all the difference. That's exactly what The Secret of Jesus' Apparitions offers, a path towards certainty and faith through documented encounters with the risen Christ. If you're seeking hope and spiritual guidance, this ebook could be the breakthrough you need. And the best part, it's available right now as a free gift for you to download in the first pinned comment. Don't miss out. This could be the turning point in your spiritual journey. The inscription read clearly despite centuries of weathering. Pontius Pilatus, Prefectus Judaeae. Pontius Pilate, Prefect of Judea. This wasn't some medieval forgery or later Christian addition. Carbon dating and linguistic analysis confirmed the stone originated from the 1st century during Emperor Tiberius's reign, exactly when the Gospels claimed Pilate governed Judea. Gibson emphasized the significance during his conversation with Rogan. Before 1961, skeptics claimed Pontius Pilate never existed. They called him a fictional character invented by Gospel writers, but you can't argue with limestone carved during his lifetime. The Pilate stone stands 32 inches high and 26 inches wide, originally part of a dedication inscription for a Tiberium, a temple honoring Emperor Tiberius that Pilate constructed around 30 AD. Caesarea Maritima served as Judea's administrative capital after replacing Jerusalem in 6 AD. Pilate established his headquarters in Herod's magnificent palace overlooking the Mediterranean, traveling to Jerusalem only when necessary to maintain order among the volatile Jewish population. The coastal city offered Roman luxury, hippodrome for chariot races, amphitheatre for gladiatorial games, and sophisticated harbour engineering that rivaled Rome itself. The stone's discovery location proved particularly ironic. 4th century builders had repurposed Pilate's dedication as a common step in their construction project. For centuries, people literally walked over the name of the man who sentenced Jesus to death, unknowingly trampling the very evidence that would later vindicate gospel accuracy. Roman historian Tacitus had mentioned Pilate briefly around 120 AD, calling him a procurator, using terminology from his own era rather than Pilate's correct title of prefect. The inscription resolved this historical discrepancy, confirming that Pilate held military authority as prefect, not merely civil administration as a procurator. Dr. Jerry Vardaman from the University of Michigan authenticated the find, noting the inscription's style matched other 1st century Roman dedications. The Israel Museum in Jerusalem now houses the original stone, while plaster casts remain on display at Caesarea's archaeological site, where tourists can witness firsthand this tangible proof of gospel historicity. 29 years later, another discovery would shake the archaeological world. Construction workers building in Jerusalem's Peace Forest during November 1990 accidentally broke through the roof of an ancient burial cave. When archaeologist Zvi Greenhut arrived at the scene, he found 12 limestone ossuaries scattered across the tomb floor, bone boxes used for secondary burial during the 1st century. One ossuary immediately captured attention. Elaborately decorated with intricate rosette patterns typically reserved for wealthy families, it bore 2 inscriptions in ancient Hebrew, Yehoseph bar Caiaphas on the long side and Yehoseph bar Kapha on the narrow end, Joseph, son of Caiaphas. Inside, researchers discovered the skeletal remains of a 60-year-old male, along with bones from 2 infants, a young woman, and several children, suggesting a family tomb of considerable status. The timing proved historically perfect. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus had documented that a man named Joseph, who was called Caiaphas, served as high priest from 18 to 36 AD, precisely the period when Jesus faced trial. The Gospel accounts in Matthew, Luke, and John all identify Caiaphas as the religious leader who presided over Jesus' interrogation before sending him to Pilate. Gibson shared a touching moment from his family life during the Rogan interview. His 12-year-old daughter had approached him one evening, troubled by classmates who claimed Jesus was mythical. Gibson opened his laptop and showed her photographs of the Caiaphas ossuary displayed in Jerusalem's Israel Museum. "This belonged to the high priest who accused Jesus," he explained, pointing to the Hebrew inscription validated by Israeli laboratories. While archaeologists continue uncovering these remarkable discoveries, there's another layer of evidence waiting for those ready to explore greater spiritual truths. Don't wait. Only a few copies remain available in the first pinned comment. The child studied the images with innocent clarity before responding, "Dad, if the man who accused Jesus was real, then Jesus must have been real too." Gibson's voice softened as he recalled that moment. Sometimes we need to reclaim that childlike simplicity. We complicate truth with academic arrogance and instant skepticism when the evidence stands right before us. The ossuary's authenticity underwent rigorous scientific testing. Patina analysis confirmed the limestone's age, while paleographic examination of the inscription matched 1st century Hebrew script patterns. The elaborate decoration indicated high social status, consistent with the high priest's position as one of Jerusalem's most powerful religious figures. Dr. Ronnie Reich from the Israel Antiquities Authority called the discovery the first archaeological evidence of remains from any major New Testament figure. The bones of the man who condemned Jesus to death now rest in climate-controlled storage, a tangible link to the most pivotal trial in human history. The archaeological discoveries continued mounting throughout the following decades. In 2002, antiquities collector Oded Golan revealed an ossuary bearing the Aramaic inscription Yaakov bar Yosef Akui de Yeshua, James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. Though authenticity debates persist, statistical analysis by André Lemaire suggested only 20 men in 1st century Judea could have possessed this exact combination of family names, making the identification statistically plausible if not definitive. The Sea of Galilee yielded its own treasures in 1986 when severe drought exposed an ancient fishing vessel buried in lake sediment. The boat, measuring 27 feet long and 7.5 feet wide, dated precisely to the 1st century through carbon-14 testing and pottery analysis. Preserved in the Yigala Lon Museum, this Jesus boat represents the exact type of vessel Peter, Andrew, James and John would have used during their fishing expeditions before joining Jesus' ministry. Archaeological teams working in Jerusalem's Old City confirmed the geographical precision of gospel narratives. The Pool of Bethesda, mentioned in John 5:2 as having 5 porticos where Jesus healed a paralyzed man, emerged from excavations showing exactly 5 colonnaded areas surrounding the ancient reservoir. Similarly, the Pool of Siloam, where Jesus restored sight to a blind man, materialized from beneath centuries of debris, its stepped construction matching John's detailed descriptions. The brutal reality of Roman crucifixion gained archaeological validation in 1968, when construction workers discovered a 1st century tomb in northeast Jerusalem. Inside lay the remains of Yehohanan ben Hakol, a crucified man whose right heel bone still contained a 4.5-inch iron nail driven through it. The nail had struck a knot in the cross's wood, bending and becoming impossible to remove, thus preserving this grim evidence of Roman execution methods. Forensic examination revealed the nail's trajectory through Yehohanan's heel matched precisely the crucifixion techniques Gibson portrayed in The Passion of the Christ. The victim's leg bones showed fractures consistent with the crurifragium, breaking legs to hasten death by preventing the condemned from lifting themselves to breathe. His arm bones bore scratches, indicating nails driven through wrists rather than palms, supporting gospel accounts over medieval artistic interpretations. Dr. Josias, the anthropologist who examined Yehohanan's remains, noted that victims typically hung naked in public view for days as warnings to potential rebels. The discovery provided forensic confirmation of crucifixion's calculated cruelty, a method designed to maximize suffering while ensuring slow, public death. This archaeological evidence transformed abstract theological concepts into visceral historical reality, validating the gospel account's accuracy regarding Jesus' final hours. Just as these ancient stones preserve eternal testimony, some revelations are meant to be discovered at the right moment. If you're feeling drawn to learn more, grab your copy now before they're all claimed. Check the first pinned comment. Gibson transformed these archaeological insights into cinematic reality when creating The Passion of the Christ. Unlike typical Hollywood productions that prioritize entertainment over accuracy, Gibson assembled a team of Roman historians, Jewish archaeologists, and biblical scholars to ensure every detail reflected first-century Palestine. Dr. William Fulco from Loyola Marymount University spent months coaching actors in proper Aramaic pronunciation, the language Jesus actually spoke in daily conversation. The film's flagrant scenes drew directly from Roman military manuals and archaeological evidence. Gibson consulted Dr. Frederick Zugibe, a forensic pathologist who had studied crucifixion for decades, to accurately portray the flagellum's devastating effects. Each leather thong contained metal balls and sharp bone fragments designed to tear flesh systematically. The scourging typically delivered 39 lashes, one less than the Torah's 40-lash limit to avoid accidental death before crucifixion. Even seemingly minor details reflected historical precision. When Simon of Cyrene helps Jesus carry the cross, the scene follows documented Roman practices of conscripting bystanders when condemned prisoners collapsed from exhaustion. The Via Dolorosa's cobblestones, the soldiers' armor designs, and the crowd's multilingual shouts in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Latin all emerged from archaeological research rather than directorial imagination. Gibson addressed Christianity's most controversial claim during his Rogan appearance, the resurrection itself. While acknowledging this supernatural event transcends archaeological proof, he pointed to compelling circumstantial evidence. Paul of Tarsus, writing in 1 Corinthians 15:6, around 55 AD, claimed Jesus appeared to over 500 people simultaneously, many still alive when Paul penned those words. Such a public claim invited immediate contradiction, if false. The disciples' radical transformation provided another compelling indicator. These frightened followers who fled during Jesus' arrest suddenly became fearless evangelists willing to face torture and death. Peter, who denied knowing Jesus 3 times during the trial, later proclaimed Christ's divinity before hostile crowds in Jerusalem. Historical records document that 11 of the 12 apostles died as martyrs rather than recant their resurrection testimony. As Gibson noted, people don't die for lies they know are false. They might die for lies they believe are true, but not for fabrications they personally invented. The explosive growth of Christianity throughout the Roman Empire within 3 decades suggests something extraordinary occurred beyond natural explanation. By 64 AD, Christian communities existed in Rome itself, compelling Emperor Nero to blame them for the Great Fire that devastated the capital. Archaeological evidence from Roman catacombs confirms organized Christian worship occurring within a generation of Jesus' death. The most compelling testimony emerged from hostile witnesses, Romans and Jews who had no motivation to fabricate Christian propaganda. Cornelius Tacitus, Rome's greatest historian, wrote around 116 AD that Christus suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus. Tacitus despised Christians, calling their beliefs a most mischievous superstition, yet confirmed Jesus' historical existence and execution. These archaeological findings represent just the beginning of what's been hidden in plain sight for centuries. For those seeking the complete picture, time is running short. Secure your copy through the first pinned comment while still available. Suetonius documented tumults in Rome during Emperor Claudius's reign at the instigation of Chrestus, likely a misspelling of Christus. This suggests Christian communities had reached the imperial capital by 49 AD, merely 16 years after the crucifixion. Pliny the Younger's letter to Emperor Trajan around 112 AD described Christians gathering before dawn to sing responsively a hymn to Christ as to a god throughout Asia Minor provinces. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus provided the most detailed non-Christian account. Writing in Antiquities of the Jews around 93 AD, Josephus described Jesus as a wise man who performed surprising deeds, and noted that those who had first come to love him did not cease after his crucifixion. Though later Christian copyists likely embellished portions, scholarly consensus accepts the core reference as authentic. The Nazareth inscription, discovered in 1878 and dating to Emperor Claudius's reign, 41 to 54 AD, proclaimed death penalties for tomb robbing. An unusually specific decree that many scholars interpret as Rome's response to Christian resurrection claims. This marble tablet's timing suggests the resurrection narrative had spread widely enough to warrant imperial attention within a decade of Jesus' death. If these insights resonate with you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your super thanks support helps us create more content like this. Join our community and stay connected. Gibson concluded his Rogan appearance with characteristic intensity. Faith doesn't fear investigation, it welcomes it. Every archaeological dig, every manuscript discovery, every scientific analysis has strengthened rather than weakened the case for Christ's historicity. He leaned forward, his voice carrying decades of conviction. Data doesn't create faith, but it demolishes excuses. The believer remains free to believe, while the skeptic must choose whether to deny evidence or surrender to truth. The rapid expansion from a handful of terrified disciples in Jerusalem to organized churches across 3 continents within 30 years defies natural explanation. As Gibson emphasized, something extraordinary happened in first-century Palestine, something powerful enough to transform cowards into martyrs and reshape human civilization. The archaeological record continues revealing that Christianity's foundation rests not on mythology, but on historical bedrock that skeptics ignore at their own intellectual peril.